Hey everybody, my name is Jose, aka Joe Engineer, and I'm here with a follow-up video to my air-cooled flat 6 oil change video. And the reason why I'm doing a follow-up video is because on the previous video I did not do the removal of the sump plate and inspection of the oil screen, the filter screen that is in here, and a replacement of the gaskets. And the reason why I didn't do that was because it is common for owners to not change this with every single oil change. And the question that came up a lot in the comments during my oil change video was, well, how often should you replace the gaskets and inspect the screen in here? And after doing a bunch of research, the correct answer is clearly do it with every single oil change. If you want to be absolutely safe, then it doesn't take that much more additional effort to take these 8 nuts off, pop the plate off, check the screen, clean it off if there's any dirt or goo in there, put the new gaskets on, and reinstall the plate with new nuts and new nylock nuts and crush washers. The reality is that there are a lot of people, including myself, who don't do it every single time with every oil change. And the reason for that is that at some point, I guess you begin to assess the health of the engine, and if it's unlikely that there's going to be any debris or solid pieces of stuff in here, then you simply don't change it as often because you can kind of afford to do so. In my case, because this is a very recent rebuild with only 5,000 miles, 6,000 miles on it roughly, during the break-in period, I did a bunch of oil changes, did a bunch of inspections, and I did not see any solids or any debris in the screen. So at that point I figured, okay, it's pretty safe to just do it, every few oil changes or whatnot. However, if you have the situation where maybe your engine is very high mileage, maybe it's a track car that gets driven really hard, or you're on the fence on whether or not you should rebuild your engine, or maybe the engine's even low mileage, but it hasn't been taken apart in many years or decades, then it might be worthwhile to take this plate off and inspect the screen with every single oil change. So I'll leave it up to you to determine how often you want to do that. Short answer, do it every oil change. Long answer is use your own judgment to determine how often you want to take this off and inspect the screen. The most crucial thing is obviously doing the oil change and filter change with the right interval.
Here's the hardware that you're going to need to reseal the sump plate at the bottom of your engine. You're going to need 2 of these round paper gaskets that are part number 930-101-391. And they are 2 round paper thin cardboard gaskets that have an 8-hole pattern on them. And along with the gaskets, you'll need a set of brand new M6 nylock nuts and a set of 6mm aluminum or copper crush washers. Again, these have to be brand new. You can't reuse these, otherwise they will leak. And since this guy has a 8-hole bolt pattern, you're going to need 8 of these and 8 of these. I don't know if there is a part number for an entire kit that has all of these in it. If I do find a part number, I'll put it in the description of the video, but here are some commonly available Worth 6mm crush washers that you can probably get from Pelican parts or any of your favorite European part suppliers, as well as these generic nylock, yellow zinc lock nuts. And the torque spec for these guys onto the studs on the bottom of your engine case, per the Bentley manual, is only 7 foot-pounds, which is 84 inch-pounds or 10 Newton meters. So not very high torque. You could almost just cinch these down by hand. But if you like, you can get a tiny 1/4 inch torque wrench, but at the bare minimum, a 1/4 inch ratchet with a 10 millimeter socket.
Now here, I have already performed a oil drain, replaced this crush washer with a new one, so the sump currently does not have any oil in it. There might be some sitting under the pan here, so it might dribble out as I take it off, but I'm going to leave this crush washer on here because it's brand new and I just torqued it to spec. So we're going to ignore this part for now, and we're going to just strictly focus on taking the plate off, replacing the gaskets, and inspecting the screen. If you want to know more details on the entire oil change process in addition to this, then I'll put a link somewhere around here to take you to the original oil change video, which has a more step-by-step process of how to do the oil change itself. And basically what you have here is 8 M6 nuts. You can use a 10 millimeter socket to crack these open, and look how lightly torqued these things are. Light finger pressure and they all come off. So remember that when it comes time to retorque them. This is only 7 foot-pounds or 84 inch-pounds, I believe, or 10 Newton meters. I forget what it's in the Bentley, but yeah, there's not a whole lot here to it. I'll move this, take this hardware off, and I'm actually a little curious to see how if there's any surprises in here. I really hope there isn't. There shouldn't be any surprises, again, because this is a relatively healthy engine on a recent rebuild, but anything is possible. And depending on the stuff you find in here, you may realize, you can determine where the problem areas are in your engine, and if you need to rebuild it soon. Oh, we're dribbling now. Okay, here we go. I did this oil drain about a couple of weeks ago, so it's very possible that even though the engine was empty at the time, that there's going to be quite a bit of oil that has drained from the internals onto the bottom of the sump. So here we go. Oh yeah, quite a bit of oil. I was worried that I was going to be stuck to the bottom of the engine case, but that doesn't seem to be the situation here. Okay, so this came off relatively easily. If it's kind of stuck to the bottom of the engine case, or if someone used some silicone sealant or some kind of goop to prevent leaks, then you may have to get very, very carefully get some plastic wedges or plastic trim tool to kind of go around here and crack the seal open to be able to pry it off. Do not use any chisels, flathead screwdrivers, or any sharp objects that could put any scratches into the mating surface here. Otherwise, you'll create a permanent oil leak, and Lord knows these engines have enough leaky tendencies already. So I'm gonna take this off. Okay, let's pop off these paper gaskets. There are two paper gaskets in here. They are on the they go above and below the screen. They go in between every two metal mating surfaces. Okay, take the screen off. Let's see what we got. Whoa, lots of oil running down my hand. So before I drop this, let's take a look at the screen itself. And I hope you can see it in the dim light that I have here underneath, but thank goodness there isn't anything obvious. There's no debris, there's no nothing, just old brown oil. Thank goodness. No chunks of anything, no metal filings, no little bits of plastic or glue or anything like that. So I'm very happy to see that. Nothing in here either. It's all fairly clean. So that's good news. Thank goodness. Now we have a little bit of peace of mind that this engine is still relatively healthy despite all of its leaks and whatnot. This gasket that's against the engine here is a little more brittle than the one that was below it. Maybe this one gets exposed to more engine heat. So what are some of the things that you could find in here that would cause you some alarm? Well, if you find any solids whatsoever, you should figure out what exactly those solids, those particles were, and determine, identify them so that you can then figure out what's the next step to take after that. Some of the typical things you could find in here that are just kind of real obvious ones off the top of my head. If you find any black or brown little plastic bits in here, little broken chunks of plastic, those could be off of your timing chain ramps. So if you find any of those, then that means that it's time to pull the engine out, take off the timing chain covers, and go in there and replace the timing chain ramps on both sides. And I believe that's a job that you can do without, yeah, you could do that by just taking the timing chain covers off, and you don't have to split the case or do anything like that. Another thing that you could find in here, if you see little bits of almost like thin sheet metal, that could be off of lock tabs that are holding the oil pump to the case. And there's also lock tabs on the intermediate shaft gear. If you find that, you probably may need to consider at some point opening up your engine to, do a full rebuild. If you find any bearing material, that's obvious. Any little bits of bearing material, then that could be your rod or crank bearings, or in my case, those were fine, but my intermediate shaft bearings were were starting to go out. If you find any solid chunks of cast aluminum, that could very much be your the timing gear on the intermediate shaft. My intermediate shaft was missing an entire tooth when I took it apart. So at some point there was probably due to lack of oil changes and dirty oil, some dirt particles got jammed in between the gear teeth on the crank gear and the intermediate shaft gear, and probably caused one of the teeth to break off. And thankfully it made its way down to down here to the sump, and probably got flushed out during an oil change. I never saw the chunk, but when I took my engine apart, I saw that the timing gear was missing a whole tooth, and yet it was still working. So yeah, that was pretty surprising to see. Those are the kind of the more obvious ones that I can think of. Obviously, if you see any big chunks of anything, of metal or anything, then it's probably time to consider splitting the case to see if you can rebuild the engine. One last one, you could also, depending on how these are put together, sometimes there are big chunks of silicone or engine case sealant, or that are floating around from, you know, someone who used a little bit too much goo to put the engine together. And that could be dangerous because those could plug up oil galleries, and then you'll have a lack of oil to certain parts, certain bearings, or certain parts of the engine. So also, if you see any big chunks of sealant of any kind, then it's time to consider splitting the case to rebuild it. But that's kind of, those are some of the major things that you need to really look at. Beyond that, if you don't see any, if you just see like very fine shavings of metal, then you know, inspect your drain plug to see if there's any metal shavings there. Inspect the one on the oil tank, and just keep an eye on it every oil change to see if it gets worse and worse, or if you keep seeing metal shavings with every oil change. And at that point, it's probably a good idea to start looking into doing an oil analysis so that you can determine at a microscopic level what kind of metals you have in the oil. And again, that will tell you what parts of the engine bearings or anywhere else are potentially wearing out, so that you can understand what next step to take. But yeah, that's about it. Now let's, this surface looks pretty clean. There's no gouges or anything, so I think I can just put the gaskets, new gaskets, back on here, and we should probably be okay. So let me grab the new gaskets and new hardware, and we'll pop those back on. Okay, so I've got my two new gaskets, paper gaskets, and my brand new hardware, 8 nylocks and crush washers. And we're gonna go ahead and just give this a wipe down, make sure there's no chunks of debris that could potentially prevent the gaskets from sealing nicely. All right, then you take one gasket, one paper gasket, put it on. Okay, then you grab your oil strainer, and here's another detail. This engine is a 3-liter SC motor. I believe the 3.2 Carreras and onward have an oil pump that has a built-in strainer on the front. So when you take this cover off, you would just wipe off the the strainer on the pump. I don't know if it comes off of this inlet here or not, but if you don't, and if you have one of the earlier styles, see how there's a hole there, and then there's kind of a dent on the other side. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you do not cover up this tube, because this tube is the intake for the oil pump. So you want to make sure that you do not install it like this, where this hole will be covering up the intake to the oil pump and potentially starving it of oil. So you want to make sure that you install it the other way, like this, so that, oh, this thing's coming off, so that you line up so that the intake of the oil pump is unobstructed and it can suck oil from the bottom of the sump plate. Then, so I've got one gasket in between this flange and the case, and now you grab another gasket and put it here, like that. And then you grab your sump plate. Right, sump plate is here. Fortunately, as you can see, this is where my oil drain plug is. Here's the magnetic part, and thankfully there's no little metal shavings or anything on it, so thank goodness for that. Now, another thing to keep in mind, again, we want this hole to be unobstructed so that the sump can, so that the engine oil can drain down into the bottom of this sump plate and get sucked up into the oil pump. So, same thing goes with this plug. Do not place the plug this way over the intake of the pump. Flip it over the other way so that this portion of the plug sits kind of in this little indentation. That way there's enough, that way this big hole or depression here in the plate is directly underneath the intake tube of the pump. So let me take this guy off. We've already given this a wipe, a clean. Looks good. Now put this on like that. And now grab your washers, new washers, and new nylock nuts, and get those little bad boys started by hand. This is really hard to do with my hand covered in oil. Just give it a little, there, just enough for it not to fall off. And now you can go ahead and do the rest of them. Okay, so after you've got all of the threads started, by the way, be very, very careful. Make sure you don't cross thread these. They're so tiny and so delicate and easy to cross thread, easy to stretch, easy to snap off. So be very mindful of what you're doing here. So after you've got all the threads started, go ahead and start to snug them down in a crisscross pattern. Just kind of go back and forth. Until you've got them all done. Keep going. You can go around more than once. Okay, I can feel it. It's kind of seated down here. All right, stop turning. Stop turning. Stop turning. Snug. 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 And snug. I'm like barely putting any pressure on here. Kind of choking up on the ratchet. All right, now these are snug. So yeah, now you torque them down to spec. 7 foot-pounds, no more. 84 inch-pounds or 10 Newton meters. These are probably already. Go. 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 And that's it. Check these, make sure I didn't miss any. Okay. Yep. Yep. All good. That's it. If you be very careful with these, be conservative. Again, like the valve covers, these are actually smaller than the nuts on the valve covers. Those are M8s, these are M6s. If you discover that you do have a tiny bit of oil weeping, either here, under the crush washers, or from in between the gaskets, then you can always come back and snug them back ever so slightly until they stop leaking. But that's all you need to do. You don't have to put any glue, any goo, any whatever on them. That way they're easy to service in the future. But that's about it. Easy process. Hope this was helpful. Again, if you want to understand the entire oil change procedure, go back and watch the other video. And with this video, that completes the entire process. Thanks again for watching. I hope this has helped you. Please support the channel however you can. I have a donate button. I have Porsche products for sale. I have links to Amazon products. Please support however you can. And while you're down here, please clean up your engine so that you know where to find the leaks in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.